You're listening to the Multifamily Mentor Show.
My name is Terrence Doyle.
And I'm Chris Lopez. You probably know us from the BiggerPockets Real Estate Ride Along Show. Well, now we're talking everything multifamily. We bring in top industry experts from around the country to come join us in our Denver studio for an in-depth, in-person conversation.
We're going to be diving deep into deals, underwriting, raising capital, and everything in between. Join the conversation.
You're watching episode 2 with Alessandra, where we walk a property and then do her 7 steps for underwriting.
We have an off-market 14-unit deal in core Denver. It's a hot neighborhood. Alessandra's gonna show us what she looks for on the exterior, the interior, the people that she calls for due diligence. You're not gonna wanna miss it.
So this is a deep dive in underwriting. Check it out, ask your questions, and enjoy the show.
As you can see, we're in this more affluent neighborhood in Denver, a neighborhood called Mayfair, which is one of the trendier, cooler neighborhoods. Lots of families, lots of dogs, lots of kids, which I think in my experience is like a really great thing. Yeah. We're also close to Colfax Avenue, which is a major thoroughfare. Actually, side note, one of the longest continuous roads in the United States, Colfax right there. So close to a lot of shopping, grocery, Starbucks. You can walk to a lot of cool bars and restaurants.
Homely.
Totally, right? So this is a great neighborhood. It's an off-market deal. So I called one of my buddies. I said, hey, we need to look at a property that's off-market in Denver. So we have this like awesome brick 14-unit building in a core Denver neighborhood. So like a killer off-market deal for anybody out there that's like looking to start in real estate. Yeah. Now, talk to me about your 7 steps for underwriting. Let's go through them here and then we'll go in more detail. And with Chris in the studio.
So I think that first, when you come upon a property, they're going to give you like an OM, an offering memorandum, where they're just going to probably market it more than they should and project rent bumps that are just going to be off the charts. So I would probably skip that and go straight to the financials. They're always going to show the best pictures, show the model unit. Maybe not all of the units have been turned. So I would just want to come here and visit the property just to make sure you're getting a hang of what it actually looks like. What do the roofs look like? Was it replaced? Do the parking lots need to be stripped? How many parking spots are there? Stuff like that. And then I would go straight to the financials. Then I would want to, the second step, look at all of the irregularities that come with the T12. Mm-hmm. So why were some months higher than others? And make sure those are up to date in the most current month. So if you're getting something that was just in April, you'll want to make sure you're getting it up to the most current month that you're at right now, because you don't know if they maybe switch property management companies. Was there a fire? Did the insurance go up? Were the taxes reassessed? So just making sure that you have the up-to-date financials, looking for what months stand out more than the others, if there was a water leak, et cetera, like that.
Yeah. So let's pause right there. So those first 2 things are really key, right? Is that we have to separate marketing and due diligence and data, right? And so what you touched on that I love that most people don't talk about is you skip the OM. Yeah. The OM is just a marketing piece of paper, and it's made by a salesman, not an investor, right? So everyone out there that's looking to underwrite, you have to understand that you want to skip the OM and go straight to financials. The financials are the data, right? That tells the story. You know, a marketing piece can tell you anything, but you really have to get straight into the data. So I love that even new in the game, you already understand that an OM is nice to look at, it looks pretty.
The deal works from the OM, but then if you're actually putting the real numbers in, you'll realize it might not be a deal at all.
Totally, 100%. And then I love that you're getting into the T12, the trailing 12, and you're asking for the most up-to-date, because a lot of savvy owners that are trying to maybe not deceive, but maybe be shrewd, is they won't give you the most up-to-date months because maybe something happened recently, maybe there was a mass exodus, maybe there was a big flood, a fire, or maybe there was just something happened they don't want you to know. So getting the most up-to-date month on the trailing 12 is super key. So Alessandra and Chris are gonna go over the modeling and those kind of things more in depth in the studio. So let's finish the rest of the 7. So we did the first 2.
So the third, I think that you just want to make sure you understand underwriting, and that you can do on your own, but you want to maybe join a mentorship group and find other people that are doing the same thing. They can check your underwriting, fact check by speaking to property managers or speaking to different contract services on your own. So just join a mentorship group. I think that's really helpful. Join meetups. I'd say that would be the third step. So you really understand what you're underwriting, what kind of terms you could be getting, what kind of growth you're looking at. Like, look at the market. Like you just said, this is an affluent neighborhood that's on the rise. Like 5 minutes away could be a completely different neighborhood. So you just really want to make sure you understand what's really going into that. I think the fourth step would be look at the rent comps. Again, anything that's very close within a mile radius, you want to make sure that they're very similar in properties. So the property down the street that has a pool and a tennis court is not going to be a rent comp to this. It could be completely different, or they might have a dog park, or they have like all new granite countertops. You just want to make sure it's the same unit size, they have the same amenities. So this is 14 units and within the same area. And then that will bring me to the next one of continuing the rent comps of like, where are their rents getting to? Just make sure it's apples to apples on that front. Again, with the granite countertops or the stoves or what CapEx needs to be going into the deal. Just make sure they're lined up in that sense.
Yeah, that's a huge point. There is the rent comps is, Alessandra, you and I talked about this last night, is you don't just look at rent comps on a computer screen, you actually have to go physically to them. So one of the things my team and I do on every single deal is we drive to the top 5 rent comps in the area, and we compare the 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. So you want to compare apples to apples, right? So if you have a building like this that's 9 1 bedrooms, you want to compare it to another building that is majority of the same unit mix.
Same square footage, same
finishes,
same square footage,
amenities. Yeah, I love that. So, one of the big nuggets and takeaways is go drive the rent comps. Don't just look at them online. There's some great resources online. We use that to start the underwriting, but you really have to go see them, touch it, feel it, see it in person. So I love that you're doing that, and that's one of your top 7. Okay, what's the next one? What's number 6?
I think to have the conversations with the people. So when you're doing your underwriting, you want to make sure that you have your lender in place. Your terms could be completely different depending on the age of the building, what your experience is, your track record. So have that conversation of what type of debt terms you can get. Could be based on the occupancy, how much is in there. Is it going to be a bridge loan or an agency loan? I think that also you need to have the conversation with your property manager, so they'll be able to provide like an accurate pro forma on how they run their property, what are their fees, is payroll included in that, is there a maintenance person, a leasing person. They'll be able to give you the most accurate inline underwriting for that year 1 projection when you do hire a new property manager. The third is have insurance agents that you can reach out to. You'll typically want to give them the age of the building, the unit mix, basically the details of the building. They'll be able to give you a standard of how much it's going to be per month. And then the last is the tax assessor. I always call the tax assessor. I am asking, when were these reassessed? How often do you reassess them? How do you calculate these? I think taxes are a huge part of the underwriting. I know that in Nashville, they're increasing by like 20% every 5 years. So it's a lot that you just need to make sure that you're fine tuning every single detail.
So let's unpack those 4 people. So step number 6 was there's 4 people you have to be able to call on every single deal. Number 1 is your lender, right? You have to understand the terms so you can plug into the model. So you have to be able to call lender, either a broker that can give you 4 or 5 term sheets, or you have to be able to get 4 or 5 term sheets from different local banks depending on the deal. So lender, the second one is property manager. You have to understand the rents, what their fees are, how they charge their fees, what their policies are for pets and late fees and those kind of things. So property manager. The third one is insurance. You have to have an insurance broker that you can get accurate, up-to-date information on what the insurance policy, the premium, and how there is it in a flood zone. There's all kinds of different variables based on location, geography, the city, the submarket of that city,
of the electrical.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you have to have a great relationships with insurance brokers, either one or multiple. So you always want to get 2 to 3 bids minimum on any one of those. And then the last one is that I love that no one really talks about is you have to call the county to understand what the taxes are going to be, because property values are increasing so much, especially in this area. Denver, historically, over the last 10 years, have appreciated between 6 and 8% annually, right? So what does that mean? Property taxes are going up. So the only way to know accurately and to plug it into the model is you have to call the county and understand when was the last time it was assessed, when's the next time it's going to be assessed, and how is that calculated so you can put an accurate number into your model. If you're not understanding property taxes, you're not going to have an accurate return for either yourself or your investors. So I love that that's one of your big things. I mean, that is maybe one of the most crucial and overlooked pieces of information is property taxes. For the deals that we're doing, we're actually hiring a company to help us calculate them because they're so complex. But I love that you're doing that. Okay, so that's 6. Those are the top 6 underwriting tips. What's the 7th?
This leads me to, like, everything that we just talked about, having those conversations leads you to the next one, is that you're going to be underwriting a ton of deals. Like, we're underwriting like 10 a week and then visiting. I think in the last 2 weeks I went on 5 property tours, and we're constantly putting in LOIs, constantly underwriting. So that's why it's really important to have your team in place, but also know that it is a long game. It's going to take time, and you just have to follow through with it. Just keep practicing, keep underwriting, keep reaching out to all of the team members in place. So.
That's right, is that not every deal you look at is going to be a winner, right? We typically look at 20, 30 deals before we have a deal that we're going to make an offer on. We probably make 10 offers before we get one deal. So what you talked about, the long game, having relationships, playing the long game, having a long-term perspective on your underwriting, and not trying to make the numbers work because you really want to get a deal done. Wait and be patient, wait for the right deal.
Yeah.
So those are the seven underwriting tips from Alessandra. I think that those are amazing. I think you're going to have a book coming out soon. You're going to have a manual. I mean, there's some really
Maybe
great tips.
Maybe a small little paperback or something.
That's right. Yeah. You got some great tips for people that are starting out underwriting. And remember, a year ago, she wasn't even in real estate. Now she's already closed a 36 unit. She has another 70 under contract, and she's using these 7 steps to underwrite her deals. High five. Good stuff.
All right, so we're back in the studio. We're gonna take your 7 steps to underwriting and plug it into the model here. Now, of course, you do not know the Denver market. We do, but you know underwriting, so we're gonna keep this very high level and talk about the importance of underwriting, but using this property. So you walk the property, you got financials. What's step 1? Where do we start, Alessandra?
I would say go straight to the T12 and just make sure that you have the updated financials.
What is a T12?
A T12 is a trailing 12 of the past 12 months of the expenses and income on the property, just so you can get a high level to put it into your spreadsheet and see where the property is, how it's running. So I would take a look at this, and then this will give you the most accurate underwriting. And then I would just make sure to look at step 2, which is look at all the irregularities. This one didn't have that many. If anything, I would just say in the winter or summer months, it's more of the utilities being used, but that's pretty standard. But typically on other T12s, you just want to make sure that you want to check what abnormalities are in the underwriting.
Let me ask a question. So as you're looking through all this, because this is, we got a lot of newer investors, new underwriters looking at this. A lot of data on here. Where do your eyes go? Use the mouse cursor and kind of just walk us through, what do you visually look for in those main points?
Yeah, so typically I'd want to look at, I think vacancies is a good one. This one seems pretty standard. Maybe 1 or 2 units have been down, but that's fine. But if you're seeing a huge dip, you just want to know why. Why is there so much turnover in the property? Or what is there new property management company that's removing tenants? Are they cleaning up the tenant base? Just trying to get some feedback on that front. I'd also want to check the utility income and then cross-reference of what utilities are the tenants paying and how much are they paying per month. So this one was, I believe, $10,477, but it looks like they're paying a flat fee of $75. So I'd want to see what's included in that, because that divided by 14 is not 75. So I just want to make sure what is that adding into. Then I just want to look at what other income they're implementing into the property, just to see. This will be super helpful when you're looking at your comps. You want to know, what are other properties paying? Do they have laundry machines? Do they have a pet fee? Can you match them if they're a reasonable comp, and just see how you can add extra income to the property. Over here, I would just want to look for any standouts, but once this is all in our spreadsheet, you'll be able to look at, maybe are we paying too much for a certain service? So we'll look at that when we look at the underwriting spreadsheet.
Okay. And
then I would just want to see, so our maintenance typically will include our contract services, so landscaping, snow removal, and contract cleaning. You just want to make sure that that is in its own little bucket, so you can just kind of reach out to those contract services and get a general idea of, could we be saving more money on something? So I'll also show you that in the underwriting as well.
When you say different bucket, you mean just highlight it to reach out to them, or what exactly do you mean?
I think repairs and maintenance, and then contract services and turnover should all be their own separate things. So you're just able to reach out. Maybe you could be saving more money if you had a different laundry contract in place, or if your landscaper could be saving more money on, if you just want to keep having that constant communications with different companies to see maybe you could be saving money somewhere. That's mainly what I look at. And then I just want to check the utilities. If there was maybe 1 month where the water was very expensive. You want to know, was there some sort of leak? Was there a plumbing issue? I would want to see just how much everything's adding up to see what you can possibly put back onto the tenants, and if it's going to be too much, and what you're accounting for. So yeah. Then taxes, I would just want to get a general idea of where the taxes are and see if that's going to line up with the OM, and also you want to be calling the tax assessor to see maybe if that's going to be changing year over year, but we will also get into that when we get through the steps. So yeah, those are just the general things that I look for. Then I'll pull over to the rent roll, and I just want to check the unit mix. I want to check the square footage of each of the units, and then get an average to get a general idea of how much people are paying per square foot, so we can see what the comparable properties are nearby to get their rent increase.
So you like the rent per square foot metric? That's what you use to help check comps?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I do. And then I'll pull us over to our third step, which is underwriting onto the spreadsheet. This is very important. So I think everyone should join some sort of mentorship program. So that way you can download a spreadsheet, or you can just get a general idea to bounce off those questions to see if you're fine-tuning the underwriting correctly, if the market that you're looking at is in line with what you're projecting for your year one expenses. And so this is the one that I use.
And a great tip for viewers out there, go to the BiggerPockets forums. Great information out there, great people to find. You can often find people in your niche or also your market as well. I connect with a ton of great people that way. So you utilize the BiggerPockets forum as well.
Yeah, definitely. You can ask any questions that you want off there, and there's an answer out there for you. So then I typically, like I said, off that rent roll, I like to just get a general idea of the square footage per unit. So you're able to move to our next step, which is making sure that your rent comps are in line. So the only reason why we're getting these increases is because we were able to look at rent comps that are within a 1 mile radius that also are very similar in unit size, square footage, what types of amenities are they offering. Is it a 50 unit versus a 300 unit? That's not a comp. Do they have a tennis court versus no amenities whatsoever, a dog park? Just making sure they're as accurate as possible, because you're not going to get the same amount of rent increase if that person has a pool, and if you automatically pull that rent up, it's just not going to happen, and you're going to end up with more occupancy in your building. So
what would you tell people? Because I mean, it's very rare to have, the perfect comp. Like that does not happen. So how do you adjust, like, hey, what amenities or what things are more important or less important? Because you're never going to be
You'll never be a perfect comp, but you want to make sure you're in the same unit size. So like 50 to 100 versus 150 to 250. Like those are different. You want to make sure amenities are somewhat in line. You want to make sure that when you're pulling up the rents that they're pretty similar in square footage, because if there's a unit next door that's 1,000 square feet that's getting 1,200, doesn't mean that your 500 square foot can get 1,200. Mm-hmm. You want to just make sure that's kind of matched up. And you can also check on Rentometer, you can check on Reonomy, and then there's free resources such as hot pads, and just Google Maps sometimes is helpful just to look at, okay, where are my comps and how can I relate them into finding what my market rent should be. So cross-reference all of those just to get as many details as possible, which kind of moves me to the next step, which I think is also similar in line with the rent comp data, but you also, when you're driving the property, you want to just go and visit every single property that is a comp, so you can kind of rule out, is this in line? Does this work? Do you think we can get those rent increases? I think that looking at your comps is the most important part in your underwriting, because pulling up a rent and not being able to back it up will just crush you.
And when you say go walk, you just mean go drive the property. You're not like...
Yeah, I just drive the property and see what kind of amenities they have, what they need to be cleaning up on. If like maybe they're getting more rent but your property is nicer, then you could pull it up. So just being able to cross-reference all of them. And just seeing, once you're walking your property, just what's going to be needed in CapEx. So that brings me down to over here. We usually start the threshold at $5K per unit. I think that's
like your default.
That's just like
standard.
Right before we're visiting the property. If we see that there's maybe the roofs need replacing or there's a plumbing issue, like we'll adjust it from there based on the detail after we do our due diligence and our inspection. But obviously it'll be different with an older build. If I'm going to like a 1931 build, like maybe I'll put 10K. So really just do your research. And then that brings me over to the expenses. So these are all the T12 financials right here that we put in from that spreadsheet that I just showed you. And then for the year one projection, this leads me to my next basic assumption is that I'm not sure with the Denver market. I know Nashville's very different, but these year one projections is really important to have the conversations, which brings me to the next step, which one is the property manager. If they are managing properties that are similar and nearby into the area, they're able to give you their pro forma on what these year one projection underwriting looks like. So you'll be able to adjust these numbers. And then, like I was saying, looking at those financials, I would also want to see like, maybe are we paying too much for something? So like I said, revisiting the contract services at $565, maybe how can we be saving money there? Or turnover costs, why are we at $759 per unit? What are they putting into that? Going back to the broker, like what exactly are they doing on these turns, and just adjusting from there. And then speaking to the property manager, how do they run their property? Looking at this underwriting, how can we adjust this? And what does like payroll cover, or what is the property management fee? Is it 6% or 10%? Does that include payroll? Does that include maintenance or your leasing? So just having that conversation, that's one of the people that you need to have a conversation with. The second one is your tax assessor. So I know in Denver, they reassess every 2 years. You just want to call them up, you give them the address to the property, you ask them, how often do you reassess this property? Where are we in the cycle? How do you calculate it? Just so this is a crucial part of your underwriting. It could completely make or break it. I know in Nashville, it's skyrocketing every 4 years, and it's just shifting our numbers so much. So just being able to make that phone call and giving them the property address is really helpful to see where your projections could be. And then
that is one of the hardest things that are as taxes, because it's just something you have zero control over. And Colorado last year passed some bills that changes how everything's assessed, and everyone's kind of like, okay, in a couple of years, we're going to see how it actually pencils out. We don't know. So like in Nashville, like 932, if we were projecting it, we might even put this to like 1,500 for the next year. Like it's so all over the place. You just want to make sure that you're calling them, especially if you're non-controllable taxes, or your non-controllable expenses, which is taxes and insurance. And so insurance is the third call that you want to make. You just want to make sure, like this one is $550 per unit. You want to know, why is it $550? Typically, I'm seeing like $450 or $350. Is it because of the age of the building? Is it because of the unit mix? Is it because of the electrical wiring that could maybe cause fire damage? Like, you just want to make sure you're getting those quotes from insurance agents so they can give you an accurate underwriting year one projection, so you can save money or also stop yourself from being in danger from spending more money. And again, that's so market specific. Like out here in Colorado, we have severe hailstorms.
Exactly.
Age of roof, and if you're in a certain hailstorm track, your interest rate, your rates go up way more.
Because I don't even know. So could change the deal. And then you just want to make sure on your growth assumptions that you're being more conservative. Like I said, I don't know the Denver market as well, but just making sure you're accurately you're accounting for everything. So how fast the rent increases, your other income, those taxes, what expenses are going to be increasing over time, what RUBs are you going to be implementing, and then how are you going to project your assumptions based on where the market's at in vacancy, if you have to put out concessions, and just understanding your market is really important. And then the fourth conversation is to speak to your lender. I think that your entire assumptions could be shifted based on your lender. So I just did a standard 3.5 interest rate, 24 months of IO, but this could be based on your track record. It could be based on the property. This might be a 5% and 0 months IO. So just having that conversation to just see where that's going to be adjusted to is really important. So just having those conversations is very important. And then the last step is just deal flow. I think that people underestimate that how long it takes to actually get a deal. You're in this for the long game. We probably underwrite like 30 deals before we even put an LOI in, and then before we even get accepted for an LOI, it might be 1 out of 15. It's a long game, and it takes a lot of practice, which also just wraps me around to like joining a group to understand the underwriting, because you don't want to make a huge mistake, or you want to really understand and educate yourself on what you're doing. So
So those were great. I want to take this back now and kind of go from a little bit more less tactical to like, hey, we got people out there wanting to, do what you're doing. Go out there and do this. Like, how important is it just to get reps in there? Like, what would you say to people? I want to underwrite. How do you get better?
I think go onto brokerage websites, start having those conversations with brokers. There's properties on their websites. Start getting comfortable asking for the T12 and the rent roll, and then playing around with the numbers, asking the questions of like looking through the financials of why months were higher than the other, and then having those conversations with brokers. Keep practicing. If maybe the deal doesn't work, where does it work for you? Is it a longer hold period? Is it by lowering the price? Like, I think just keep toggling around with the numbers, because that's the way you're going to get more familiar. And then having those conversations with the 4 people, having a team in place is the most important part, because let's say your deal did work, but you have none of those people in line, then it's probably going to get swooped up and you're just not going to be ready for it when it does happen. So I can't stress enough having the conversations.
I've also found it very helpful. Like one of the best people I learned underwriting from was from a lender, because they see so many really deals, they have their assumptions, and it's like, hey, why do you use this assumption? Because they underwrite, more than anyone, and being able to pick like a good lender, they are worth their weight in gold when it comes to assumptions and, hey, why are you doing this here and this?
I think the lender becomes your best friend, because you can just send them over an address, they'll send you over the terms, and they'll say, hey, you should underwrite this for this in this market. So it's awesome.
So in terms of just as you underwrite get better, you can talk to brokers, talk to lenders, but what are some other good resources you can go out there, get feedback in underwriting? Because you don't want to be doing, 100 underwritings and making the same mistakes over and over again. Like, how did you get good at it, and how did you get feedback on there?
I would say find a mentor, keep practicing, have them look it over, see how you could be improving, really know your market, but just joining a team of people that are doing similar things to you, finding some sort of program that you can join, or mentorship or operator that is doing the same thing that you're doing. I think it's the most helpful. Yeah.
All right. So final question here. Yeah. What's the best way for people to take action from like square one on underwriting? They see all this, they're inspired, they're like, holy crap, I want to do what you did, where you're going from 0, now you're going 100 miles an hour. What do I do?
Start with educating yourself, reading books, listening to podcasts. It's going to take time to really get familiar. You probably will get frustrated at first, but that's okay. It took me a long time to really get accustomed to it as well, and just really research the market that you pick a market, research that market so you really understand what that is, and then start reaching out to those brokers and then practicing on the deals that they have on their websites. And then it'll honestly just flow from there. And then find other people, like mastermind groups that you can join, so you can all discuss it and maybe all underwrite the same property and just have a discussion about it. Yeah.
That's it right there, people. Take the advice, listen to it, and as she said in this episode and last episode, take action.
Take action.
So if you like this, please subscribe to the channel, leave your comment. And Alessandra, how can people get a hold of you to just pick your brain and get some knowledge from you?
You can reach out to my email, alice@authenticacquisition.com, ALESS. I have a Calendly link on my website, Authentic Acquisition. I'd love to speak to you and be a resource. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much. We know you made a trip out from Nashville to Denver. We appreciate it. Our viewers love it. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
All right. We will see you in the next episode.
You're listening to the Multifamily Mentor Show.
Join the conversation.